Before we begin, thank you very much to Andrew S. for joining the Patreon campaign. Thank you very much for the support. Thank you for helping me keep the channel going and the daily content coming. Always appreciated. Thank you very, very much. We have something to talk about today. We have a very big something to talk about. So, I know a lot of you are going to want me to do a full-on review of Liokaiser. I know, like, after yesterday, like, it's really exciting to open it up and go, oh, wow, everything works and everything's good. But a full-on review is a lot of staging I do not have space or time for right now, because we're talking about 7 individual Transformers plus everything they do together, plus a lot more function than normal. A full review is going to take a lot of work. By the time I'm done with it, iron's going to be ice cold. So we're going to strike while the iron's hot, and instead, I'm going to give you my initial impressions of the entirety of the toy package, based on the last, 24, 48 hours of messing around. I guess 24, 48. Been somewhere around there. I've lost track. But I thought, let's just kind of go over it in detail here. So we'll do things a little bit differently than normal. So, aside from just fancy packaging, and everything in here is like very densely packed if you didn't see the unboxing video, let's go into like the simple stuff. Let's get this out of the way. The stands this time are fine. They're not terribly stylized. They're just Decepticon purple. They're in wedges. They come with little connector points so that you can join all 3 together into one big display stand for Liokaiser or the entire team. I do like that there are 2 slots for each one of the risers. That way you can have your choice of what direction it is angled in, So for instance, the position for Liokaiser would be the point in front, but for the sake of the size of the team, if you want to have like the whole team in vehicle mode rolling forward, like the opening of Victory, you'd have to rotate it around. So I think that works. I think that's actually a pretty clever idea. But yeah, they make for nice stands. They're nice and heavy as far as, normal plastic stands go. We talk about the bots themselves, and this is where we have some genuine discussion going on. So we're going to talk about Guyhawk, and we're going to talk about Hellbat at the same time, because they're essentially the same figure. So in vehicle mode, both of them pretty much do what you would expect a bot like this to do. The legs tuck in to actually become, the rear section, the other side of the vehicle. You can see where the arms do not really do any element of transforming. They kind of have spots where they peg into the side of the jet mode and into the wings. So they don't go anywhere, but they also don't really have any transformation aspects of them, of their own, other than folding in the hands. So they are not the most complex of figures, and we wouldn't expect them to be with everything that this set has to do. But the jets themselves do look nice. They are heavily painted. I do like the gigantic yellow splotches on the wings, and they make the Decepticon symbols pop really, really well. It was this set that kind of made me notice that Liokaiser has a theme of yellow detailing throughout the entire team, which is a good call, as there is no yellow member of the team. But no, both of them make pretty good jets. Both of them do make pretty good jets. The robot modes on these are probably the best in the entire set. And for reference, I am aware that when I took these photos, I forgot to flip up the little shoulder things, the little intakes on Guyhawk. So you will excuse me if that is incorrect. But that also is to the point of, well, you can still flip them down. They're for the combined mode, but you can flip them down if you want these two to look a little bit different from each other. And design-wise, engineering-wise, these two do kind of hold up under the exact same level, I should say. Articulation is the same. They do articulate pretty well. Since the shoulders are universal on these, they can get a little bit obstructed by that intake on the shoulder, so you can just flip that in order to gain more shoulder motion, which is a nice little incidental feature. Beyond that, yeah, you're expecting the exact same range of articulation you expect from any figure, and they're very well designed in that they have enough balance to be able to stand up, even despite having so much of the jet hanging off their back. And yeah, they still hold up pretty well. Like, these would be fine. If I bought these at a normal retail store, these would be fine. If we show you a little bit of posing, and they're breast masters, they're breast force members, or whatever we want to call them, the breast animals. I really need to stop calling. I need to stop saying breasts in this video. But yeah, you can see they do pretty well as if, like, visually without them. And that's going to be important when you see a few of these guys. I do like that as part of the transformation aspect of getting them into the arm modes for Liokaiser, they end up with a torso crunch, which you can see Guyhawk being very hips forward as a result. This is an incidental point of articulation, but it's kind of fun to mess with. It's kind of fun to know that it is there. So yeah, these are probably the most balanced of anyone on the team. Like, they're simple, but given what Liokaiser has to do, that's not to be, shouldn't be surprising. And also, let's be real, it's kind of accurate. Victory's character models were far more, like, dedicated to what the actual toy could do. There's not a lot of embellishing. Slimming down, certainly, but not embellishing, like, the function of the toy. They're depicted to be simple in show, and in the original toy line, they are kind of simple. For good reason. Let's move into Drillhorn and Killbison. I really, really like the look of Drillhorn. It's a very cool tank, very cool drill tank, better than most drill tanks I tend to find in Transformers. This drill actually looks like it might be able to carve away enough rock for him to actually do some tunneling. But otherwise, yeah, it's just a really cool look. Like, I really like the overall look of him. Not so much for Killbison. I will be honest, it doesn't matter what direction you put that cannon on him and which direction that you point that block. It is just a brown block of plastic. There is no such thing as making him look like a tank. It is disappointing. It is kind of disappointing because I was kind of looking for... I was kind of hoping for, like, full, like I was hoping for like a little bit more of an accurate depiction. The older one, the original, the G1, is still blocky because it's going to be a leg, but it still had tank shapes to it. It wasn't just a block with treads. So he is underwhelming in his vehicle mode. I will admit that. What I will give them, these are big, hefty figures. So, like, seeing them in person, especially with how size classes work these days, it's hard to parse that these are technically Voyager class figures because of their engineering level. But these guys feel it. Like, they are definitely not deluxe size tanks. Like, they are hefty in hand. They also transform kind of simply. With them, it's really just the arms. Again, arms are pinned to their side and the legs extend. And I like how the legs extend because, like, the sides and the front panel and the back, like, all that opens up. And then you just kind of, like, double hinge shift it into its new position. And it all locks together again. It almost, like, thematically almost feels like, if you see any, like, a Guyhawk or any of those mecha animes where, like, they show you the internal shot of the, like, the smaller leg chunking into another vehicle. And then you see all these, like, little mechanical things, like, go crew and, like, form up around it. Kind of feels like that in a weird way. Now, these guys are weird. So, I like the overall proportions that you have going on in Drillhorn. And again, I feel like there's a little bit more lacking in Killbison. Mostly because his arms are so scrawny, even though the legs are super thick. Because the legs do not collapse in any way. And I can remember when I first saw the photos of these guys going, like, I really wish those legs could collapse in and not be so just stuck out like these massive blocks. But I found out why they are designed like that. Because these guys have to give Liokaiser an ankle tilt. And this is not like and this is not like it's not like a brawl ankle tilt where they can just like put a hinge in the middle of his torso and call it a day. Because these guys are going to be sideways on the leg, which is not typical of any of the other combiners. That's not a viable option. So instead, that entire rear section of their tank modes contain the foot of Liokaiser. There's a heel spur and a toe that flips out, and this big panel that's interconnected between both of their legs becomes the flat panel of the ankle tilt. Which is a really cool little trick to do engineering-wise. Because it does work. I've gotten crazy poses out of Liokaiser, and he's still stable. Like, it does a good job holding them together. But it does mean that, yeah, they are very, very thick once you get them into robot mode. Now, the downside of these guys is pretty much what I was afraid of. Yeah, so the way they are engineered, and I really wish Hasbro had done something about this, they did not. The hinge to get their arm outward like this is at the very top of their shoulder, whereas the connecting point from shoulder to body is in the middle of the torso. Meaning, if you raise his arm forward to point a gun, like it's like down here. And it don't look good. It looks really ugly in person. And it's hard to convey it in photo, but it don't look great. It's one of my most disappointing parts, and both of them have it, and I don't know why, because the points on the figure that you could have put normal universal shoulder joints on are open and available. They don't really do anything engineering wise. You probably could have put something there, and there's nothing in transformation it would have affected. You know, or at the very least, it didn't have to be such a huge, like difference in distance between like torso, like shoulder to body and shoulder to arm. I don't know. Like it's a weird design choice. And it does unfortunately mean that Killbison, who I actually like, I think Killbison is very endearing in Victory. He's kind of the Decepticon who doesn't want to be there. But yeah, he kind of ends up being the weakest of the toys, unfortunately, because of a few of these varying flaws. All right, let's move into the individual bots, and we'll start with Jaruga, and there's really nothing wrong with that vehicle mode. Like there's nothing wrong with this vehicle mode whatsoever. It is a spot-on upgrade and modernization of his original G1 F1 car mode. Looks sick, right? Like black, yellow, orange hits detail. Like you can't go wrong on this. You really can't. You throw in a missile battery on top, yeah, you're doing even better. Like this is absolutely outstanding. Nothing wrong with this whatsoever. And then there's this. So the one thing, so they did a really good job of integrating all of the components for Liokaiser into the base figures without having additional accessories, with the exception of, which is very much the G1 thing of Liokaiser, but the exception of the pelvis area, which has to be separate in order to have better engineering across the board when you're in Liokaiser mode. The funny thing about this to me was like even the original Liokaiser needed to have a removable head, but this one still has one removable piece, and I will give them credit because, like, okay, well, you're even with a G1 toy. But I actually really love this function. It makes no sense. It's absurd. It's ridiculous. It makes him incredibly back heavy, right? But it's kind of cool. I kind of like it. Now, there's nothing you can do with it once he's in robot mode. There's no like handle for him to hold it or anything. There's no way to turn it into like some kind of missile emplacement. It is just a big crotch lying around doing nothing. Nope. So whatever. It's a goofy way of handling the problem. When we get to Jaruga in robot mode, that is when we have some really when we have some really cool looks to him. Again, black is not going to miss as a color scheme. The white looks really, really good as well. Even proportions on him. Yeah, and again, simple to transform. But again, you're not going to, everything they have to do, he's going to be way too complicated otherwise. So, yeah, really, really solid figure. And then he, unfortunately, is one of the ones who suffers the most without his breast in place. Gotta figure out a better word for this. But it is true. Just big gaping hole in his chest, which is a little unfortunate. It doesn't look great if you want the weapon mode out. Also, I really wish that wheels could do something a little bit different. I wish they pushed in, folded back, something. I know this is accurate to the original, but it also gets in the way of arm articulation and poses sometimes. So I kind of wouldn't have minded if they did something a little bit cleaner. I don't know, nitpicking me. And then we move on to the leader, Leozac. And man, I feel like Leozac ends up suffering the most for having to combine, which isn't surprising out of a torso of a combination. You can see it in the rear section of the vehicle mode here. Like you see those big blocks behind the tail fins. Yeah, that's those are the shoulder connectors for Liokaiser. The overall jet is fine. They do simplify. He is as simple to transform as any of the other jets in this set. I will point out everyone does have landing gear. That is a nice little feature to have, especially when you're paying this price. And they did do like the head panel flap thing, so it actually hides his head in vehicle mode, which, okay, I'm glad they did that, because the early shots were a little weird looking with his head just hanging out below the cockpit. But I want to show you this. So this is how I've got the rear section transformed to kind of minimize how much is sticking out. This is not what's in the instructions. The instructions will tell you to leave those shoulder blocks pointed straight back and have the feet pointed straight back as well, which I think looks incredibly awkward, as like the end point of the jet is supposed to be the tail fins, not this weird block that's sticking out behind them. Now, for the most part, they've actually done a pretty good job integrating all these combiner elements. They hide and tuck in well in the actual robot mode and vehicle modes. In fact, in the other two jets, the hands are actually here in the rear section of the vehicle, and they have engines sculpted in. So they have jet engines. So they are actually part of the vehicle mode. That's clever engineering. I'm really, really happy they figured that one out. And then this I don't know, it does make the vehicle mode look a little ugly, but it also hurts the robot mode as well. So proportionally, unfortunately, I was hoping early photos we got to see was just kind of like poorly taken, bad lighting, maybe look better in person. And he does to an extent, but for the most part, Leozac is very oddly proportioned. Small head, small arms, but super big Mega Man boots. And yeah, he's got blocks sitting off the back of his heels. Not the back of his heels, the side of his heels. He actually doesn't have anything in the back of his heels, which is kind of a mistake. So, with no heel spurs, there's a lot of poses where he just does not want to stand up. At least he didn't for me when I tried to pose him the first time. Because I try to get into like little action hero poses for my figures. So unfortunately, he's a little bit lacking. He doesn't have his legs like straight underneath him. He can be very back heavy, which I feel like, again, could have been fixed. I mean, really, I feel like those like shoulder blocks could have been fixed in general. Like here, if they rotated to the back and became his heel spurs, they'd be perfect. Fix two problems at the same time. But what's unfortunate about the design is the legs themselves don't do any real transforming. They have the connection points for getting them into torso mode, but beyond that, there's really nothing that stops them from being part of the transformation in jet mode. They're basically saying they're doing nothing. So I feel like they could have engineered some way of getting those big shoulder blocks out of the way and cleaning them up a little bit, especially if you're going to have those legs be as thick as they are. And they didn't do that. So I don't know if there's some internal engineering that is just like taking up too much room, but it doesn't seem like it. Hey, at least he looks fine without his chest on him. There's that. Okay, so before we go into the combined mode and the rest of everything, we are going to have a little shout out for the Breast Force members. These little animals are probably one of my favorite companion gimmick pieces. I really like my headmasters, but the idea behind these is so much better for a few reasons. Number one, these end up being similar to Soundwave minions, and I do really like that aspect, that they all have some kind of animal companion to handle tasks that they are maybe a little bit too big for, or need someone, or like need other feet on the ground for. And I like that better than, say, like a target master or a power master, because like they always depict these like very often they depict those kind of characters as, well, there's another character inside that head or inside that gun, inside that engine, and you kind of never care about them. You know, like character wise, who is your favorite target master Nebulon? Do any of you have an answer? I don't mean what's your favorite target master as in this is the one that turns into the best gun. I mean, who is your favorite persona, your personality that is in the gun? Like, is the guy in the gun? I don't have one. I don't think most of you have one. I feel like I'm like neglecting something because they make those as characters and I'm supposed to care about them and I don't, because they're just fancy ways of handling accessory parts. These take that away. They're a part of the Breast Force member, you know, like the little lion is a part of Leozac. I don't have to overthink it or worry about the character or think about the character that I'm blatantly ignoring here. And obviously they can do the Power Master thing and the Target Master thing, along with being a Soundwave minion type thing. So even if they are very simple, you know, tiny little barrel flip out, tiny little peg to hold on to, it still gives them a lot more playability, and I still think they function a lot better. So I really, really like these guys. Now, main event. We talk Liokaiser himself. So I should have had something for size comparison, but he is big and hefty. But I mean, like a little bit taller than Devastator. But honestly, the proportions are different. They're better. So for all the times I've been staring at modern combiners going like the legs look kind of stumpy, no, we actually have a long-legged look here. It gets very clear that the aesthetic of the combined mode is where a lot of the engineering focus went, because that separate thigh piece, the separate hips, that could have been any length they wanted. They chose to make him long-legged. And I don't mind that choice because it does make him more accurate to the original anime depiction. It gives him a more unique silhouette compared to a lot of combiners. I do like it. I do really like it overall. And it really does help out with the overall aesthetic of Liokaiser, because aesthetically, he does strike different than most combiners. He's much more symmetrical, you know? So like the shapes and everything feel the same across the board. So he feels like this more solid character. And I don't mind having, you know, that different shape to him to kind of convey that a little bit more. Let's see. Just to talk about him while we're on screen, I do really like the fact that all 6 of the main members have their staff. They are modular in that you can add the little spike ring to them, or you can add the spearhead to them, or you can chain them together and make the big nunchucks like you see here. Obviously, you can combine like all of them together. You actually have one additional chain length. So it's like 6 spears, 6 rings, 6 stabs, 6 chains. You don't need 6 chains because you only need 5 to link all 6 of the stabs together. So if you want to make some weird like attack ring out of these things, you have a 6th chain for that, which is a weird little addition to throw in, but I'm not upset about it. So yeah, neat accessories. I do like them overall. And then posability on this guy is actually really, really good. He's not really missing anything. Like, he feels like he's got the same level of articulation as like a Voyager or Leader class toy today. Right down to like 2 hinges in each hand for his fingers. You know, and like the individual finger, the index is a separate hinge. So they did go extra on him for articulation. And like I said, it does help. A lot of his hip joints and a lot of in the shoulders, it's all ratcheted. The elbows are also ratcheted. The ankle tilt, like I said, works really, really well. So yeah, you can pose him around a lot, and he's stable enough and solid enough to hold those poses, which is great. I think I have a shot of him. Yeah, I have a shot of him holding his cannon. We'll get to that in a second. Pointing out the head sculpt on this for just 1 second before we get there. I always loved the look of this. Like, it's kind of Voltron, right? With the lion head on top, but it has such a cool look to it. And like the 4 eyes staring at you at once, it's kind of intimidating. I love the look of it for a combiner head. But yeah, to my point here, you can see he does have a lot of stability to him. Like, he has a lot of strength in those joints. Even with a big weapon in his hand like that, not an issue whatsoever. Fantastic. Like, fantastically solid. The only thing I would have changed is, like, maybe the knees could be a little bit tighter for me. Because it does feel like, while they hold their position during poses, it does kind of feel like when I manipulate them, they're like, I should have had to put a little bit more force into that. And that's probably the only knock I could give the engineering on this toy. Yeah, I think I mentioned in the last video that, like, I wish the joints were a little bit tighter, specifically those. Other features I liked I didn't know about until I got it in hand. The breast force members, the breast animals, all have little spots to hide on the Liokaiser mode. In fact, this covers up the gap in the left over from the transformation of the tank boys, which is actually a really cool little trick to do. And then the rest fit all across the back. I want to point out here that for a lot of us, we looked at those early photos of how Jaruga combined on here, and we kind of went, wait, he's just the waist. He's just the connector between the pelvis section and the torso. That's so lame. The truth here is that he is holding that torso together for dear life. There are so many extra connection points between Leozac and Jaruga, it's kind of silly. So he's actually doing a lot to hold the main body of this combiner together, even though it doesn't look like it because he's mostly, formed up on the back, which we will admit, it's basically where he ended up in the G1 toy as well. But for here, it does do a lot more work than it actually looks like. So I was actually really happy to see that. Also, weird little incidental feature as part of the transformation. You have to fold the ears on Liokaiser's head down in order to fit inside of Leozac's body. So his ears are hinged. He has posable cat ears. Artists, do with this information what you will. So that's the main bulk of the figure. However, obviously there is one more that we have to cover, which is the stretch goal figure, the 7th member, and that is Death Cobra. Death Cobra is... I feel bad for this figure because I'm really happy it exists. Like, it's crazy to think that this was thought of in the production process of, like, hey, this one-off episode character that, got killed off so quickly, but he has a significant role in the plot, and he was almost part of the team. So it would be really cool to include him. Yeah, but the fact is, he's a design that was never intended to have an actual toy. He was made for an episode, and nowhere did that go. That does mean he suffers a lot. He still has to be able to form a replacement arm for Hellbat, and he does form a replacement left arm, which is great. So it does mean he has to have that big block that forms Liokaiser's forearm in the engineering to form like a bicep and an elbow. Which means he has to be way bulkier than his animation model intended. Like, even the canopy of the helicopter is like rounder and like more like puffed up than the one that's actually depicted in the episode. And there's really no avoiding that. It's just part of how the engineering has to work in order to do all the Liokaiser combination stuff. And then on top of that, he's got an additional mode that we're going to talk about soon. So visually, the robot mode isn't bad. I mean, it's two-tone green and yellow. That's like a very big weakness for me. The overall look is fine, and function-wise, it is fine. His proportions are pretty good. His articulation range is great. He was almost not going to have thigh swivel. Hasbro fixed that. Thank you, Hasbro. And yeah, like, he does a pretty good job as a figure until you look at the back. This is unfortunate. This is unfortunate. So, yeah, that giant bubbled up canopy for the helicopter is just a massive backpack. The helicopter blade has to be part formed onto it. And then his tail and the rotor just hangs off of his butt. I guess you can just assume it to be like a snake tail and just put it thematically as part of him. But it also just kind of screams like this was going to be a stretch goal figure. We didn't put too much engineering into him. I really wish it could fold up even at any point in that length, just so I can clean him up a little bit. But yeah, this is another result of, like, he has to do the stuff that Hellbat does, even though he's not designed for it. So he does end up with a ton of back kibble. So that does weaken him quite a bit as a figure. I will point out that the little gun on the front of his helicopter is 5mm pegged, so he does get an actual handgun on top of his little Cobra gun he gets. So he kind of works. Like, it kind of gets a little bit extra as a result. But at the same time, I understand, like, he has a lot to do. So, like, first off, there is the cannon mode. This is a very generous thing to call a mode, because it really is just his helicopter mode with his legs bent down at the hips and knees. I don't know. It looks like he's just, I don't know. It just like he's kneeled over looking for something on the ground, or just sort of trying to, like, look down behind Liokaiser. He looks like when the kid at the store is being so unruly, the parent has to, like, pick him up at the waist and just, like, carry him out by, on his shoulder. It's kind of the visual I give. This is another reason why I kind of wish the tail could fold at some point, because it just kind of sticks out there. Like, if it could fold and reveal two other barrels, that would have been cool. That would have been a neat way of adding a little bit more to this. This is also the mode where all of the Breast Force can combine their little animal guys in gun mode, so you can make a bunch of guns on here. But I kind of like them in the spots where they're intended to hide a lot better. Not just because, like, it gives them, like, storage space, but also because they do tend to fill up gaps and look better. So yeah, I appreciate that there is a mode here, but it really is a mode based on a partial transformation and one additional tab and peg to hold this together. Otherwise, yeah, I mean, it's kind of silly. It's kind of silly, but at least it does allow them to integrate. The alternatives would have been some weird backpack accessory thing, which would have been a nightmare to pull off engineering-wise, or some kind of giant gun, like he's Piranhacon or something, that he would not have been able to hold up, even with all of the ratchet joints in his arms. So you know what? Okay, fine. Shoulder cannon. Whatever. I do like the fact that he forms the arm. Now, remember, the whole thing I liked about Liokaiser, and the point of the design, is symmetry. When you as opposed to other combiners. So here, he's not quite pulling that off, because obviously he does not have wings to form the shoulder guards. And then you have to do something with the tail and the rotor. Instead, he kind of comes off to me as, like, an auxiliary Zord in Power Rangers. So think of a season like Wild Force, where, aside from just, like, the main mech, you have all these extras that can come in and start forming arms onto them, and all the arms always have some kind of attack gimmick to them, right? They have a flip out cannon, or they have like a blade attached to them, something of that nature, or it might be like a big lance or something, or a shield. Here, it's a spinning rotor blade. You know, so he kind of feels like that, like the extra Zord that comes in and gives them an additional weapon when they need it. And again, I kind of wish this thing could fold the tail again, because this looks really weird. But no, as a bonus, I have to view Death Cobra as a bonus in all of this, because he's not supposed to exist, and yet he does. So the fact that they pulled it off as any kind of figure, I think, is worth commending, even if it does end up being kind of weak. But there you go. This is kind of why I'm hesitant to do a full review of these guys, because even to just like run through them in photos and explain everything I enjoyed and didn't enjoy about this set still takes over half an hour. There is so much to this set, so much to talk about. And yeah, it's not easy to cover. I commend every reviewer out there who has done the full task of like a fully dedicated video showing this guy off in detail. I might do one myself at some point, but for now, this is the first impressions. This is everything I gathered from a day or two of playing around with the guy. So let me know. If you got him, let me know what you think in the comments below. Or if you're judging based solely off of this, let me know, how do you feel about how he turned out? So that's your mission in the comment section. So you go and do that. Thank you very much for watching. I will see you next time.
Hello everyone, I am Astral Agent Magnetar, a Tokusatsu VTuber, and I am streaming 4 times a week over on Twitch, Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday afternoons, and a special late night one on late Friday/early Saturday. So come watch, come hang out, and let's make an impact together.